The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy. Hundreds of beings from dozens of different worlds filled the floating seats that circled the central holographic display. The air buzzed with clicks, whistles, and telepathic static as representatives from across the galaxy watched the unfolding crisis. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his tall, blue-skinned form casting shadows across the holographic star map. His large black eyes reflected the red warning lights that pulsed throughout the chamber. The forearms that extended from his slender torso moved gracefully as he manipulated the controls, zooming in on a small yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. "Honorable council members," Kethvar began, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his species. "We are gathered today to witness what our predictive algorithms suggest will be the final chapter in the brief history of the species known as humanity." The holographic display shifted to show a blue and green planet orbiting the yellow star. Earth hung in the simulated space like a jewel, unaware of the approaching doom that traveled toward it through the dark void between stars. Dr. Vexhai of the Nexari Collective raised one of his 6 mechanical arms. The cybernetic implants that covered half of his insectoid head glowed as he accessed the shared data networks. "Admiral Kethvar speaks correctly," he said, his voice buzzing through electronic filters. "Our quantum observation networks have been monitoring the Vorthak Empire's final offensive preparations for the past 72 standard hours. The numbers are not favorable for the humans." The display changed again, showing a massive fleet of dark, organic-looking ships moving through space like a swarm of deadly insects. Each vessel pulsed with bioluminescent patterns along its hull, and even through the hologram. Council members could sense the predatory hunger that drove the Vorthak war machine. Keeper Elder Theismore, ancient beyond measure and rarely speaking in council sessions, shifted in her crystalline form. Light bent strangely around her as she communicated through pure thought. Her mental voice reached every being in the chamber simultaneously. "The Vorthak have consumed 12 star systems in the past standard decade." Her thoughts whispered in their minds. 47 billion sentient beings have been absorbed into their collective consciousness. Their bioships adapt and evolve with each victory. They learn from every species they devour. A nervous chittering arose from the Insectoid Coalition's representatives. The Aquatic Confederation's ambassador released a cloud of stress pheromones into her water-filled environment suit. Even the usually confident silicon-based Christarch delegation dimmed their inner lights in worry. Admiral Kethvar manipulated the display controls again, bringing up detailed scans of the human military forces. The images were not impressive by galactic standards. Small metal ships with primitive rocket engines hung in space around Earth's moon and several orbital stations. Their weapons appeared to be simple kinetic cannons and basic energy projectors. "Let us examine the facts," Kethvar continued, his musical voice taking on a somber tone. "The humans have been aware of galactic civilization for only 37 of their years. In that time, they have developed faster than light travel, but their technology remains centuries behind even our most primitive member species." The display zoomed in on the largest human vessel, a battleship called the UES Defiance. Compared to the massive Vorthak bioships, it looked like a small metal toy. The ship's angular design and exposed weapon systems drew dismissive clicks from several council members. "Their largest warships measure only 800 meters in length," Dr. Vexhai added, his mechanical voice displaying the calculated disdain of pure logic. "A single Vorthak capital ship masses more than their entire fleet combined. Their energy shields operate on primitive electromagnetic principles that the Vorthak biohulls can easily penetrate." The Zephyrian admiral nodded in agreement. "Furthermore, their weapons technology relies primarily on accelerated metal projectiles and focused energy beams. Such weapons have proven ineffective against Vorthak regenerative armor in all previous encounters." Representative Kix Nella of the gaseous commune floated in her containment sphere, her electromagnetic field fluctuating with distress. "Have the humans requested assistance?" she asked, her voice synthesized through speakers attached to her sphere. "Surely they understand they cannot face the Vorthak alone." "They have not," replied Theismore's mental voice carrying undertones of puzzlement that even an ancient keeper could not hide. "Human diplomatic channels remain strangely silent. Their representatives have not responded to our offers of evacuation assistance or defensive support." This statement caused a wave of confused murmurs throughout the chamber. In the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council, No species had ever refused help when facing the Vorthak. Most civilizations spent their final hours begging for intervention that the Council's laws prevented them from providing. Admiral Kethavar called for order by raising all four of his arms. The Council's primary obligation is to observe and record, he reminded the Assembly. We cannot interfere with natural galactic selection processes. However, we can document this conflict for future study. The holographic display shifted to show the Council's predictive algorithm results. Mathematical formulas and probability cascades filled the air above the central podium, painting a grim picture in numbers and statistics. Our quantum prediction matrix has analyzed 847 previous interstellar conflicts, Kethavar explained. The algorithm accounts for technological levels, fleet sizes, strategic positioning, supply lines, and species-specific psychological factors. In every case, the predictions have proven accurate within a 0.3% margin of error. The numbers floating in the hologram painted a stark picture. Human defeat probability 99.97%. Estimated survival time 6.7 standard hours. Projected casualties. Total species extinction. Dr. Vexhai's cybernetic implants flickered as he processed additional data streams. The Vorthak fleet consists of 50,000 bioships arranged in 12 attack formations. Each formation is capable of sterilizing a planet's surface within minutes. The humans have positioned only 847 vessels to defend their entire system. The mathematics are undeniable, added Representative Zorth of the Mathematical Collective, his crystalline body refracting the holographic light into complex patterns. 847 versus 50,000 equals extinction. There are no variables in this equation that favor human survival. But even as the Council members nodded in solemn agreement, something about the human response puzzled the observers. Admiral Kethavar pulled up communication intercepts from the human fleet, playing them through the chamber's translation systems. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet," came a clear, steady voice speaking in the harsh consonants of human language. "All ships maintain formation. Weapon systems are green across the board. Engineering reports all reactors operating at optimal parameters." The voice carried no fear, no desperation, no pleading for divine intervention. If anything, there was an odd note of anticipation that the translation system struggled to convey properly. "Curious," murmured Elder Thismore's mental voice. "Most species in their final hours exhibit panic responses, religious extremism, or complete psychological breakdown. The humans appear to be calm." Dr. Vexhai's sensors detected something else unusual in the intercepted communications. "Their bio-readings are anomalous," he reported. "Heart rates are elevated, but not to panic levels. Brain activity suggests heightened focus rather than terror. Adrenaline levels indicate preparation for extreme physical exertion. Perhaps they do not understand their situation," suggested Ambassador Ythara of the Telepathic Consortium, her mental tendrils flickering with uncertainty. Their primitive minds might not be capable of processing the scale of their impending destruction. But this theory fell apart when the Council reviewed human tactical communications. The intercepts showed detailed discussions of Vorthak ship capabilities, accurate assessments of the enemy fleet's composition, and precise calculations of engagement ranges and weapon effectiveness. "They know exactly what they face," Admiral Kethavar concluded with growing puzzlement. "Their strategic analysis is remarkably accurate for such a young species. They understand the odds better than most civilizations twice their age." The mystery deepened when human fleet movements began defying standard defensive doctrine. Instead of retreating to Earth's orbital defense platforms, the human ships moved outward toward the edge of their solar system. Instead of concentrating their forces around critical infrastructure, they spread out in small groups. "Their tactical positioning makes no sense," Dr. Vexhai observed, his mechanical mind struggling to find logic in the human formations. "They are abandoning defensive advantages and moving into open space where the Vorthak numerical superiority will be overwhelming." The Vorthak fleet, meanwhile, approached with the patient inevitability of a natural disaster. The bioships moved in perfect coordination, their living hulls shifting and adapting as they traveled through space. Sensory organs the size of city blocks scanned ahead for threats, while weapon pods prepared to unleash destruction that had shattered dozens of worlds. As the two fleets drew closer, the Council's observation networks detected unusual energy signatures from the human ships. Their fusion reactors, already primitive by galactic standards, began operating at power levels that exceeded safe parameters. They are overloading their power systems, Dr. Vexhai reported with electronic confusion. Reactor output is climbing beyond critical thresholds. At current rates, they will experience catastrophic failures within minutes. Perhaps it is a malfunction, suggested Representative Kixnella. Their technology may be failing under stress. But the pattern was too uniform across the human fleet to be accidental. Every ship showed the same dangerous power spikes, the same reckless energy output that should have triggered automatic safety shutdowns. Admiral Kethavar tried to make sense of the readings. Are they attempting to boost their weapons output? The energy increase would improve their offensive capabilities, but the risk of reactor explosion makes it tactically unsound. Elder Thysimore's ancient mind pondered the data with the patience of millennia. There is something about these humans that our algorithms did not account for, she finally communicated. Some variable that exists outside our calculations. As the Vorthak Vanguard entered the outer edge of Earth's solar system, the Council prepared to witness yet another species join the long list of civilizations consumed by the galaxy's most efficient predators. Historical recording systems activated automatically, ready to document humanity's final moments for future study. But deep in the quantum matrices that powered the Council's predictive algorithms, tiny anomalies began to appear. Mathematical inconsistencies that the systems tried to correct but could not explain. The computers had modeled every variable they understood, but they were about to encounter something that no galactic civilization had ever quantified. They were about to discover what humans meant when they talked about honor, sacrifice, and the willingness to pay any price for victory. The Council's neat mathematical models were about to collide with something that could not be calculated: the human refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was mathematically certain. The war was beginning and the galaxy was watching. But the observers had no idea they were about to witness the birth of a new type of warfare, one that would rewrite every tactical manual and force every species to reconsider what they thought they knew about conflict. In the vast emptiness between worlds, 847 human ships accelerated toward an enemy that outnumbered them 60-1. Their crews said goodbye to their families, checked their weapons one final time, and prepared to show the galaxy what happened when humans got angry. The UES Defiance cut through space like a metal arrow aimed at the heart of the approaching Vorthak fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her weathered hands gripping the command rail as she watched the tactical display. The bridge crew around her moved with practiced efficiency, their faces calm despite the impossible odds they faced. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station, "we're receiving multiple hails from the Galactic Council observation posts. They're offering evacuation assistance for Earth's population." Chen's gray eyes never left the tactical display showing the massive enemy fleet. Red dots filled the screen like a digital infection, each one representing a Vorthak bioship capable of devastating entire cities. "Tell them thank you, but no thank you, Lieutenant. We've got this handled." The young officer blinked in surprise. "Ma'am, should I really tell the galactic superpowers that we've got this handled?" A slight smile crossed Chen's face. "Use more diplomatic language if you want, but the message stays the same. Humanity fights its own battles." Throughout the Galactic Council's observation networks, monitoring stations picked up this exchange. In the Crystal Dome chamber, Admiral Kethavar's musical voice rose in pitch with confusion. They refuse evacuation assistance? Do they not understand the mathematics of their situation? Dr. Vexhai's cybernetic implants flickered rapidly as he processed the data. Their response suggests either complete psychological breakdown or— He paused, his mechanical mind struggling with the alternative, supreme confidence in an unknown tactical advantage. But the human ship showed no signs of possessing advanced weapons or defensive systems. If anything, their technology seemed even more primitive up close. The hull plating was simple steel alloy, their engines burned chemical fuel, and their weapons were basic kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Williams approached Admiral Chen with a data pad. "All ships report ready for Pattern Omega, Admiral. Engineering teams have completed the modifications." Chen nodded grimly. "How long do our people have once we begin?" "Fusion reactor overload protocols give us approximately 4 minutes from initiation to critical failure," Williams replied. "All crew members have recorded their final messages. And our targeting calculations? precise to within 0.3% margin of error. The quantum resonance frequencies should cascade through their biohulls exactly as predicted. The Council observers detected this conversation through their monitoring systems, but the translation algorithms struggled with human technical terminology. Words like overload protocols and critical failure suggested mechanical problems, not tactical planning. Representative Kixanella floated anxiously in her containment sphere. Are they discussing equipment malfunctions? Their reactor systems appear to be failing. No. Elder Theismore's mental voice carried a note of growing alarm. They are discussing these failures as if they are intentional, as if reactor overload is part of their battle plan. This concept was so alien to galactic military thinking that most council members dismissed it as translation errors. No species deliberately destroyed their own ships except in the most desperate circumstances, and even then, such actions served only to deny resources to an enemy. Not as an offensive weapon, Admiral Chen opened a fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice reached every human ship in the formation, carrying across the void to 847 vessels and their crews. This is Admiral Chen to all ships, she began, her words steady and clear. In 30 minutes we will engage an enemy that has destroyed 12 star systems and killed 47 billion beings. They think we're just another weak species ready to be absorbed into their collective. Throughout the human fleet, crew members paused in their duties to listen. In engine rooms, technicians stopped their work on the reactor modifications. On gun decks, weapons officers looked up from their targeting systems. Bridge crews throughout the formation focused on their admiral's words. They're wrong, Chen continued. They've never faced anything like us before. They've never encountered a species that turns its weaknesses into weapons, that sees impossible odds as just another engineering problem to solve. The Vorthak fleet continued its approach, bioships pulsing with organic light as they sensed the small human force ahead. Sensory organs the size of buildings scanned the primitive metal vessels with dismissive efficiency. The enemy's databases showed no record of humans ever posing a significant threat to any major power. Our ships may be smaller, Admiral Chen's voice carried across space. Our weapons may be primitive and our technology may be centuries behind theirs. But we have something they don't understand. Something that no galactic civilization has ever quantified. In the council chamber, Dr. Vexhai's analysis systems worked frantically to identify this unknown human advantage. Energy scans showed no hidden weapons. Gravitational sensors detected no exotic matter. Quantum analysis revealed no advanced defensive systems. We have the absolute refusal to lose quietly, Chen concluded. We have the willingness to pay any price for victory. And we have the human talent for creative problem-solving under pressure. Today we're going to teach the galaxy what those things mean when applied to warfare. The human fleet began to accelerate, moving faster toward the approaching enemy instead of trying to delay the engagement. This violated every principle of defensive strategy known to galactic military science. Smaller forces always tried to fight from prepared positions, using terrain and fortifications to offset numerical disadvantages. But humans weren't fighting defensively. As the council observers watched in growing amazement, the human ships arranged themselves into groups of 7 vessels each. Instead of concentrating their firepower, they were deliberately spreading out to minimize their combat effectiveness. Their tactical formation is completely wrong, Admiral Kethavar observed, his musical voice rising to a confused trill. They are sacrificing every possible advantage. Commander Williams approached Admiral Chen again, this time carrying a helmet and pressure suit. Admiral, you need to get to the escape pod. As fleet commander, your survival takes priority. Chen took the helmet but didn't put it on. I appreciate the thought, Commander, but I'm staying right here. If we're asking 847 crews to give everything they have, their admiral damn well better be willing to do the same. Ma'am, with respect, your death serves no tactical purpose. Maybe not, Chen replied, clipping the helmet to her belt instead of wearing it. But leadership isn't always about tactics. Sometimes it's about showing your people that you trust the plan enough to bet your own life on it. The Vorthak Vanguard now detected the approaching human ships with their biosensors. The organic computers that controlled the alien fleet processed the tactical data with predatory satisfaction. 47 small vessels against 50,000 bioships. The engagement would be over in minutes. But something about the human approach patterns puzzled the Vorthak collective consciousness. The prey species was moving directly toward them instead of fleeing. This behavior contradicted the survival instincts that evolution had programmed into every known form of life. The first group of 7 human ships, led by the destroyer UES Thunderchild, accelerated past safe velocity limits. Their fusion reactors climbed to dangerous power levels as they approached the enemy formation. Captain Maria Santos commanded the Thunderchild, a veteran officer who had survived 3 previous alien conflicts. "This is Santos to Thunderchild Group," she broadcast to her 6 companion ships. "Remember, we only get one chance at this. Make it count." The 7 ships moved into tight formation, their hulls almost touching as they bore down on the Vorthak Vanguard. Their reactors now operated at 340% of safe capacity, energy readings that should have triggered automatic emergency shutdowns. In the council chamber, alarms began sounding as monitoring systems detected the impossible power signatures. Dr. Vexhi's cybernetic implants sparked with overload as he tried to process the data. "Impossible," he buzzed through electronic filters. "No fusion reactor can operate at those energy levels without immediate catastrophic failure. Unless," Elder Tismore's mental voice whispered with dawning horror, "catastrophic failure is the intended result." The realization hit the council like a physical blow. The humans weren't trying to prevent reactor overloads. They were weaponizing them. They were turning their own ships into guided nuclear bombs. Representative Zorth of the Mathematical Collective's crystalline body flashed with rapid calculations. The energy release from a controlled fusion detonation would, by the cosmic constants, it would tear through bio-ship hulls like they were made of paper. The Thunderchild group reached optimal range. Captain Santos's voice cut across all frequencies, human and alien alike. "For Earth! For humanity! For everyone we couldn't save." 7 fusion reactors overloaded simultaneously. The explosion that followed lit up space like a newborn star. The blast wave tore through 17 Vorthak bioships before they could adapt their hull configurations. Organic armor that could regenerate from energy weapons and kinetic impacts simply vaporized under the raw nuclear fury. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. In 10,000 years of galactic warfare, no species had ever employed such tactics. The concept of deliberately destroying your own ships as weapons violated every principle of civilized combat, but Admiral Chen was just getting started. As the light from the first fusion detonation faded, her voice reached across the battlefield once again. "All ships, Pattern Omega is confirmed effective. Execute on my mark." The remaining human fleet split into their predetermined groups. Each formation of 7 ships selected a different section of the massive Vorthak armada. The enemy bioships, still reeling from the shock of the first attack, tried to adapt their tactics to this unprecedented threat. But how do you defend against an enemy that uses suicide attacks as standard operating procedure? How do you calculate tactics against a species that treats ship destruction as a weapon system rather than a failure condition? "Mark!" Admiral Chen's voice carried across space with calm finality. 121 groups of 7 ships each began their final approach runs. 847 fusion reactors started climbing toward critical overload. 847 crews said goodbye to families they would never see again, and focused on the targeting solutions that would make their deaths count. The Galactic Council watched in growing horror as humanity revealed the true meaning of their tactical doctrine. These weren't desperate last stands or panicked final attacks. This was a carefully planned military strategy that turned technological weakness into overwhelming strength. Dr. Vexhi's voice buzzed with electronic panic. "They've calculated the exact fusion detonation patterns needed to create cascading quantum failures in Vorthak biohulls. They're not just committing suicide. They're doing it with mathematical precision." The second wave of human ships reached their targets. Fusion reactors hit critical mass across dozens of locations simultaneously. Space filled with nuclear fire as humanity showed the galaxy what total war really meant. And in the chaos of explosion and death, Admiral Chen stood calmly on her bridge, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The plan was working exactly as designed. The galaxy had never seen anything like human warfare before. They were about to learn why that was a very dangerous oversight. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos as the second wave of human fusion detonations lit up the tactical displays. Beings from dozens of worlds clicked, whistled, and transmitted distress signals in languages spanning half the galaxy. The carefully maintained order of 10,000 years of civilization cracked under the weight of what they were witnessing. Admiral Kethvar stood frozen at the central podium, his forearms trembling as he tried to process the tactical data streaming in from the observation networks. His large black eyes reflected the nuclear fires blooming across the holographic display, each flash representing the complete destruction of 7 human ships and the devastation of dozens of Vorthak biovessels. "This is impossible," he whispered in his musical voice, the sound carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "No species fights like this. No civilization builds weapons designed to destroy the user." Dr. Vexhai's cybernetic implants sparked and flickered as his mechanical mind struggled to analyze the human tactics. Warning lights flashed across his skull as his processing systems overloaded, trying to calculate the mathematics of deliberate self-destruction as a military strategy. The energy equations don't balance, he buzzed through electronic filters, his voice rising to a panicked whine. They're achieving tactical effectiveness ratios that exceed the theoretical maximum for their technology level. How can primitive fusion reactors produce this level of destruction? Representative Kixanella's electromagnetic field fluctuated wildly within her containment sphere, generating interference patterns that disrupted nearby equipment. "They're not using the reactors as power sources," she managed to synthesize through her speakers. "They're using them as weapons. Each ship is a guided nuclear missile." The concept was so alien to galactic military thinking that many council members still couldn't fully grasp it. In 10,000 years of recorded warfare, battles were fought between ships designed to survive combat. Vessels were protected by shields, armor, and defensive systems. The goal was always to destroy the enemy while preserving your own forces, but humans had thrown that entire paradigm into the recycling unit. On the battlefield, the UES Thunderchild Group's sacrifice had torn a massive hole in the Vorthak Vanguard formation. The bioships, evolved over millions of years to adapt to conventional weapons, found themselves facing something completely outside their evolutionary experience. Their organic hulls could regenerate from energy blasts and kinetic impacts, but raw fusion fire delivered at point-blank range simply vaporized the biological matter faster than it could heal. Commander Williams stood beside Admiral Chen on the Defiance's bridge, both of them watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 17 confirmed kills from the first group, he reported. "The Vorthak formation is already showing signs of confusion." Chen nodded without taking her eyes from the screen. "They've never faced coordinated suicide attacks before. Their collective consciousness is designed to process threats and adapt defenses. But how do you defend against an enemy that destroys itself to kill you?" The Vorthak fleet, for the first time in its existence, experienced something approaching panic. The hive mind that connected every bioship struggled to understand what was happening. Their enemy was deliberately destroying itself, but each act of self-destruction caused catastrophic damage to Vorthak forces. The collective consciousness tried to adapt. Bioships spread out to minimize the damage from fusion explosions. Organic armor shifted to configurations designed to absorb nuclear radiation. Weapon systems targeted human ships at maximum range to destroy them before they could complete their suicide runs. But Admiral Chen had anticipated these responses. "Signal all groups," she ordered. "Execute Pattern Omega-2. Show them what human adaptive tactics look like." The remaining human ships immediately changed their approach vectors. Instead of flying straight at their targets, they began evasive maneuvers that brought them in from multiple angles simultaneously. Instead of maintaining formation until the last moment, they split up to present individual targets. Most importantly, they began varying their detonation timing. The third wave of human ships reached the Vorthak formation just as the bioships completed their defensive adaptations. But instead of 7 simultaneous explosions, the humans triggered their fusion overloads in carefully calculated sequences. The first detonation weakened the bioarmor, the second overwhelmed the adaptive systems, and the remaining 5 punched through compromised hulls to detonate inside the enemy ships. In the council chamber, Elder Thysamor's crystalline form pulsed with colors that had no names in any language. Her ancient mind, which had observed the rise and fall of entire galactic civilizations, struggled to comprehend what she was witnessing. They are not just willing to die. Her mental voice whispered across the chamber. They are eager to die, as long as their deaths serve a purpose. This level of coordinated self-sacrifice, it should not be possible. Ambassador Yathara of the Telepathic Consortium extended her mental tendrils toward the battlefield. trying to read the emotional states of the human crews. What she found there made her physical form shudder with shock. "There is no fear," she reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "No hesitation, no regret. They view their deaths as mathematical components in a larger equation. Each ship, each crew, each life is just another variable to be optimized for maximum tactical effect." This revelation sent fresh waves of terror through the assembled council members. They could understand desperate last stands driven by emotion. They could comprehend suicidal attacks born from religious extremism or psychological breakdown. But this was something else entirely. This was cold, calculated warfare that treated death as just another tool in the tactical toolkit. The Vorthak collective consciousness began to fracture under the psychological pressure. For millions of years, they had absorbed other species into their hive mind through conquest and assimilation. They understood fear, desperation, and the survival instinct, but they had never encountered a species that viewed individual death as tactically acceptable if it served the greater strategic goal. The bioships started making mistakes. Formation discipline broke down. As individual vessels tried to avoid the human suicide ships, some Vorthak commanders attempted to retreat to safer distances, while others pressed forward trying to overwhelm the humans through sheer aggression. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable began to crumble. Admiral Chen watched this development with professional satisfaction. "They're losing cohesion," she observed. "Their hive mind can't process our tactics fast enough to maintain unified command. Shall we accelerate the attack schedule?" Commander Williams asked. "No," Chen replied. "Stick to the plan. Let them think about what's coming next. Psychological pressure is a weapon, too." The fourth wave of human ships began their approach. But this time, they did something that violated every principle the Council thought they understood about human tactics. Instead of targeting the enemy formation's center, they aimed for the bioships that were trying to retreat. Dr. Vexhai's mechanical voice rose to a confused screech. "They're attacking the ships moving away from Earth. Why would they chase retreating enemies instead of defending their homeworld?" Admiral Kethavar's musical voice cracked with strain as he tried to understand the human strategy. "Perhaps they do not realize the tactical significance of enemy withdrawal." But Elder Thismore's ancient wisdom recognized something that the younger council members missed. "They are not defending." Her mental voice carried undertones of growing awe. "They are hunting. They do not want the Vorthak to retreat and regroup. They want total victory." This realization struck the council like a physical blow. The humans weren't fighting a defensive battle to protect their homeworld. They were fighting an offensive campaign designed to completely annihilate the Vorthak fleet. They weren't trying to survive the encounter. They were trying to win it. The fourth wave of fusion detonations caught the retreating Vorthak ships in a devastating crossfire. Human vessels approached from multiple vectors, their crews timing their reactor overloads to create overlapping destruction fields. The precision was terrifying in its mathematical beauty. Representative Zorth's crystalline body flashed through rapid calculations. "At current casualty rates, the Vorthak fleet will suffer strategic defeat within 43 standard minutes," he announced, his voice crackling with disbelief. "A force of 50,000 ships is being destroyed by 847 vessels through deliberate self-destruction." The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. The Vorthak Empire had conquered 12 star systems through the superiority of their bioships and hive mind tactics. They had absorbed 47 billion beings into their collective consciousness. They were considered the most efficient military force in the galaxy, and they were losing to a species that had been spacefaring for less than 40 years. On the battlefield, Admiral Chen opened another fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice reached the remaining human ships with calm authority. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. We are now at 60% completion of Pattern Omega. The enemy formation is breaking apart, but do not mistake confusion for defeat. The Vorthak learn quickly, and they will adapt to our tactics if given time." She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. These people had volunteered for a mission they knew would end in death. They had said goodbye to their families and made peace with their fate. But their faces showed no sadness, only fierce determination. "Therefore, we accelerate to Pattern Omega 3. All remaining groups will attack simultaneously. We end this war in the next 6 minutes." Commander Williams checked his chronometer. "Admiral, that leaves no time for escape pod deployment. No one will survive the final assault." Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Commander, we stopped planning for survival the moment we chose this strategy. Our job isn't to come home. Our job is to make sure no other human families have to face what we're facing. The remaining 91 groups of human ships changed course simultaneously, all converging on the Vorthak fleet from different angles. Their fusion reactors climbed toward critical overload, as 637 vessels prepared for the largest coordinated suicide attack in galactic history. In the council chamber, every being present understood they were about to witness either the most heroic or most terrifying act of warfare ever recorded. The line between the two had never seemed so thin. Elder Thismore's mental voice whispered across the chamber one final time, before the climactic assault began. We have watched 10,000 species rise and fall, but we have never seen anything like this. Win or lose, these humans have just redefined what warfare means. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just fight wars, they solved them. The final assault began with mathematical precision that would have impressed the most advanced computational minds in the galaxy. 91 groups of 7 human ships each approached the fragmenting Vorthak fleet from every possible angle. Their movements coordinated with the deadly accuracy of a perfectly calibrated weapon. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her weathered hands steady on the command rail as she watched the tactical display. The red dots representing enemy bioships filled the screen like drops of blood, but gaps had begun to appear in their formation. The Vorthak collective consciousness was struggling to adapt to tactics that violated every principle of rational warfare. All groups report ready for final approach, Commander Williams announced, his voice remarkably calm for a man about to die. Fusion reactors are climbing to terminal overload parameters across the fleet. Chen nodded without taking her eyes from the display. Signal all ships. Remind them that precision is everything in the final phase. We get exactly one chance to end this war. The message went out across the remaining human fleet, reaching 637 vessels and their crews. In engine rooms throughout the formation, technicians made final adjustments to fusion reactors that were already operating far beyond safe limits. On bridge after bridge, captains said goodbye to their families through personal communication systems that would soon be permanently severed. But there was no despair in these farewells, no weeping or regret. The human crews spoke to their loved ones with the calm satisfaction of people who knew their sacrifice would mean something. They were not dying in vain. They were solving the largest tactical problem their species had ever faced. In the Galactic Council chamber, the assembled representatives watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as the human fleet executed maneuvers that defied everything they thought they knew about military strategy. Dr. Vexhi's cybernetic implants sparked continuously as his mechanical mind tried to process the tactical implications. They are not attacking randomly, he reported, his electronic voice crackling with overload stress. Each group is targeting specific structural points in the Vorthak formation. They have identified the bioships that serve as coordination nodes for the hive mind. Admiral Kethvar's musical voice rose to a confused trill. How could they possibly know which ships control the collective consciousness? Such intelligence would require years of study. Unless, Elder Thismore's mental voice whispered across the chamber. They determined it through direct observation during the battle. They have been learning Vorthak tactical doctrine by fighting them. This realization sent fresh waves of amazement through the council. Most species required decades of careful study to understand alien military structures. The humans had figured out the Vorthak command hierarchy simply by watching how the bioships responded to previous attacks. On the battlefield, the Vorthak collective consciousness faced a problem it had never encountered in millions of years of evolution. The hive mind was designed to process threats and develop adaptive responses, but the humans kept changing their tactics faster than the bioships could evolve countermeasures. The first wave of the final assault targeted the Vorthak coordination vessels with surgical precision. 7 human ships approached each command bioship from different vectors, their fusion reactors climbing toward critical mass. But instead of detonating immediately upon contact, they used a new variation that the council observers found even more terrifying. The human crews waited until their ships penetrated the biohulls before triggering reactor overload. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded the destroyer UES Vengeful Spirit as it pierced the outer armor of a massive Vorthak coordination vessel. Her ship's hull scraped against organic tissue as she piloted it deeper into the enemy's body. "This is Rodriguez to Vengeful Spirit Group," she broadcast to her 6 companion ships. "We're inside the command center. Beginning reactor overload sequence." The fusion detonation that followed didn't just destroy the Vorthak ship. It vaporized the bio-neural networks that controlled dozens of other vessels. Entire sections of the enemy fleet suddenly found themselves cut off from the collective consciousness. Their coordination shattered. Dr. Vexahai's voice rose to an electronic screech as he processed the tactical data. "They're not just destroying ships anymore. They're performing surgical strikes against the hive mind itself." But this was only the beginning of humanity's final gambit. As the Vorthak formation reeled from the loss of coordination nodes, the remaining human groups executed the most complex tactical maneuver in recorded galactic history. They synchronized their fusion detonations to create cascading quantum resonance failures. Admiral Chen had spent months working with Earth's brightest physicists to develop this strategy. The human scientists had discovered that Vorthak biohulls, while incredibly adaptive, were vulnerable to specific quantum frequencies when subjected to nuclear fusion at close range. By timing multiple explosions to occur in precise sequence, they could create a resonance wave that would propagate through the organic armor like a deadly vibration. The effect was devastating beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. The second wave of human ships reached their targets and began the resonance sequence. Fusion reactors overloaded in carefully calculated intervals, each explosion timed to amplify the quantum effects of the previous detonation. The resonance wave that resulted tore through Vorthak biohulls like they were made of tissue paper. Representative Zorth's crystalline body flashed through calculations so rapidly that his inner light became a strobe effect. Impossible. They have weaponized quantum mechanics using primitive fusion technology. The mathematical precision required for such coordination should be beyond their computational capabilities. But the humans weren't relying solely on computers. Each ship captain was making real-time adjustments to the detonation timing based on visual observation and intuitive understanding of the resonance patterns. They were applying human creativity and adaptability to a physics problem that alien computers couldn't solve. The third wave struck just as the quantum resonance reached peak amplitude. 35 human ships detonated simultaneously across a 2-kilometer section of the Vorthak fleet. The resonance wave that followed propagated through hundreds of bioships, their organic hulls vibrating themselves apart at the molecular level. In the council chamber, Ambassador Yithara of the Telepathic Consortium extended her mental tendrils toward the battlefield, trying to read the emotional states of the dying Vorthak collective. What she found there made her physical form convulse with shock. "The hive mind is experiencing something it has never felt before," she reported, her voice shaking. Fear. Not the simple survival instinct of individual creatures, but existential terror at the species level. They are beginning to understand that they might actually lose. The Vorthak had absorbed 47 billion beings over the course of their expansion. They had encountered desperate resistance, clever tactics, and advanced technology. But they had never faced an enemy that could outthink them while simultaneously being willing to die to achieve victory. The fourth wave of human attacks targeted the bioships that were trying to adapt to the quantum resonance. But the humans had anticipated this response as well. Instead of using the same resonance frequency, they shifted to harmonic variations that exploited the Vorthak attempts at adaptation. Elder Tissimor's ancient mind processed the implications with growing awe. They predicted the enemy's countermeasures and prepared responses in advance. This level of tactical foresight suggests strategic thinking capabilities that rival our most advanced civilizations. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as sections of the Vorthak fleet simply ceased to exist. Quantum resonance cascades tore through bioship formations like wildfire, leaving only debris and radiation in their wake. The enemy fleet that had seemed unstoppable 30 minutes earlier was disintegrating under the precise application of weaponized physics. But the Admiral's expression remained grim. The plan was working, but the cost was exactly what they had calculated. 637 human ships and their crews were dying to achieve this victory. Good people who would never see Earth again, never hold their children, never grow old in peace. "Commander Williams," she said quietly, "signal the final wave. It's time to finish this." The last 49 human ships began their approach as the Vorthak fleet entered complete collapse. The hive mind, fractured by the loss of coordination nodes and terrorized by quantum resonance attacks, could no longer maintain unified command. Individual bioships began fleeing in random directions, abandoning the collective that had defined their existence for millions of years. But Admiral Chen wasn't interested in routing the enemy. She wanted total annihilation. The final fusion detonations occurred in a pattern that created a quantum resonance bomb spanning dozens of cubic kilometers. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface, a new star burning briefly in the void as humanity demonstrated what total war really meant. When the light faded, the Vorthak fleet had simply ceased to exist. 50,000 bioships, the accumulated military might of an empire that had conquered 12 star systems, had been reduced to radioactive particles by 847 human vessels. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Beings from dozens of worlds stared at the tactical display in stunned disbelief. Where moments before there had been the largest space battle in galactic history, now there was only empty space and the fading radiation signature of unprecedented destruction. Dr. Vexahai's electronic voice was barely a whisper. Total enemy fleet destruction. 0 survivors. Human casualties. He paused as the numbers registered. 847 ships destroyed. Total crew loss. 5,164 individuals. Admiral Kethvar found his musical voice after long moments of silence. They won. A species we classified as primitive just achieved total victory against the most powerful military force in the galaxy through coordinated self-destruction. But Elder Tissimor's mental voice carried a note of something deeper than amazement. No, she corrected. They didn't just win. They solved warfare itself. They turned military weakness into unstoppable strength through the application of pure mathematical principles and absolute willingness to sacrifice. As the Council struggled to process what they had witnessed, a single human transmission reached their observation networks. Admiral Chen's voice broadcast from the UES Defiance in its final moments before reactor overload, carried across the galaxy with calm authority. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet, speaking to any who can hear this message. Today, humanity faced impossible odds and chose to redefine what impossible means. We did not surrender. We did not retreat. We did not beg for mercy. The transmission continued as fusion fire began to consume the Defiance's bridge. We solved the problem, and if anyone threatens our home again, we'll solve that problem too. This is humanity. Remember what that means. The signal cut off as the last human ship joined its fleet in nuclear fire. In the vast emptiness where two fleets had clashed, only silence remained. But that silence carried a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and the announcement had been written in nuclear fire and quantum physics. The galaxy would never be the same. The news of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy like a shockwave through quantum space. Within hours of the battle's end, communication networks, spanning 17 star systems, buzzed with frantic transmissions as civilizations that had considered themselves untouchable suddenly faced a terrifying new reality. In the crystal dome of the Galactic Council Chamber, emergency sessions convened around the clock, as representatives from dozens of worlds struggled to comprehend the implications of what they had witnessed. The holographic displays that usually showed routine trade negotiations and diplomatic ceremonies now projected tactical analyses of the most devastating military action in recorded galactic history. Admiral Kethvar stood at the central podium, his blue-skinned form trembling with exhaustion after 48 hours of continuous briefings. His forearms moved weakly as he manipulated the display controls, showing the same impossible data over and over again to Council members who still couldn't believe it. The mathematical analysis has been verified by 17 independent computational networks, he announced in his musical voice, though the melody was strained almost to breaking. 847 human vessels achieved total destruction of 50,000 Vorthak bioships through coordinated reactor overloads and weaponized quantum resonance. Dr. Vexhai's cybernetic implants flickered erratically as his mechanical mind continued to process the tactical implications. The fusion detonation sequences created cascading quantum failures that propagated through organic matter at the molecular level. he reported, his electronic voice crackling with static. The humans weaponized the fundamental forces of physics using technology we classified as primitive. But the immediate military analysis was only the beginning of the chaos. Across the galaxy, the Vorthak Empire was collapsing like a house of cards. Without their massive fleet to maintain control, the 12 conquered star systems erupted in rebellion as suppressed species threw off the chains of absorption and assimilation. Representative Kixanella floated anxiously in her containment sphere, electromagnetic fields fluctuating wildly as she processed reports from the liberation zones. The Altarian Collective has declared independence, she announced through her speakers. The Rigel Mining Consortium is expelling all Vorthak administrative personnel. The entire Centauri sector is in open revolt. The collapse was happening faster than anyone had imagined possible. The Vorthak had ruled through fear and overwhelming military superiority. When that superiority vanished in 43 minutes of nuclear fire, their entire empire simply fell apart. Billions of beings who had been absorbed into the hive mind suddenly found themselves free to think their own thoughts again. Melder. Theismore's crystalline form pulsed with colors that had no names in any galactic language as her ancient mind tried to process the magnitude of change. In 10,000 years of Council history, we have never witnessed the complete destruction of a galactic power in less than 1 standard hour. Her mental voice whispered across the chamber. The humans have rewritten the fundamental rules of interstellar warfare, but while the Council struggled with theoretical implications, practical concerns were mounting by the hour. The Vorthak surrender had been transmitted across all frequencies within 6 hours of their fleet's destruction. The message was brief and absolute. Complete unconditional surrender to the species called humanity, immediate withdrawal from all conquered territories, and a formal request for mercy. The surrender document itself had shocked Council observers almost as much as the military victory. Never in galactic history had a major power surrendered so completely to a species they had never heard of 48 hours earlier. The psychological impact of the human victory had shattered the Vorthak collective consciousness more thoroughly than the quantum resonance bombs had destroyed their ships. 3 weeks after the battle, the human delegation arrived at the Council chambers. But they didn't come as supplicants seeking admission to galactic civilization. They came as conquerors presenting terms for galactic peace. Ambassador Elena Vasquez led the human diplomatic team, a composed woman in her 50s whose calm demeanor gave no hint of the revolutionary changes her species had just unleashed across the galaxy. She walked through the Council chamber with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly how much power she represented. "Honorable Council members," she began, her words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "I am Ambassador Vasquez of the United Earth Federation. I bring greetings from Admiral Chen's successor in terms for the establishment of lasting peace between humanity and the galactic community." The phrasing sent ripples of unease through the assembled representatives. In 10,000 years of Council history, new species had always requested membership and acceptance. They had never arrived to dictate terms for peace as if they were already the dominant power. Admiral Kethvar's musical voice cracked slightly as he responded. "Ambassador Vasquez, the Council extends its congratulations on your species' remarkable military achievement. We are prepared to offer humanity full membership status and—" "Thank you," Vasquez interrupted politely. "But we're not here to request membership. We're here to establish the ground rules for coexistence." The chamber fell silent. Dr. Vexhai's cybernetic implants sparked as he processed this unprecedented diplomatic position. "Ground rules?" He buzzed through electronic filters. "Surely you understand that the Council represents the authority of galactic civilization?" Ambassador Vasquez smiled with the patient expression of someone explaining basic facts to children. "With respect, Dr. Vexhai, the Council represents the authority of galactic civilization as it existed 3 weeks ago. Recent events have demonstrated that human military doctrine requires certain adjustments to traditional power structures." She activated a portable holographic projector, filling the air above the central podium with tactical displays that made several Council members instinctively retreat in their seats. The images showed human fleet formations that differed dramatically from the desperate force that had faced the Vorthak. Earth's military academies have developed 47 different strategic scenarios for future conflicts, Vasquez explained calmly. Each scenario involves variations on what we call pattern doctrine, the coordinated use of fusion detonation sequences, to achieve tactical objectives. The tactical displays showed human ships arranged in formations that violated every principle of rational fleet deployment. But after witnessing the destruction of the Vorthak Armada, the Council members could no longer dismiss these tactics as primitive or suicidal. Representative Zorth's crystalline body flashed through rapid calculations.
Pattern Omega was scenario number 1?
He asked, his voice crackling with disbelief. Actually, it was scenario number 37, Vasquez replied. We selected it because the Vorthak fleet composition favored hive mind coordination tactics. For different enemy types, we have different solutions. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber like a physical force. The humans hadn't just developed one desperate strategy to deal with the Vorthak threat. They had created an entire military doctrine based on weaponized self-destruction, with dozens of tactical variations ready for deployment. Ambassador Yathara of the Telepathic Consortium extended her mental tendrils toward the human delegation, trying to read their emotional states. What she found there made her physical form shudder with recognition. You're not bluffing, she whispered. Your species really is prepared to use these tactics against any threat. We prefer diplomacy, Vasquez replied with the same calm tone. But if military action becomes necessary, we're ready to solve whatever problem presents itself. That's why we're here today, to establish clear protocols that will prevent misunderstandings that might lead to conflict. The human terms for galactic peace were unlike any diplomatic document in Council history. Instead of requesting trade agreements or territorial rights, humanity laid out the conditions under which they would consider other species to be non-threatening. The terms were surprisingly reasonable, but the underlying message was unmistakable. Humanity was not asking for permission to exist in galactic civilization. They were announcing the rules under which galactic civilization would be permitted to exist near humanity. Dr. Vexhai's mechanical voice buzzed with confusion as he processed the diplomatic implications. These terms essentially grant humanity veto power over any military action in this sector of the galaxy. That's correct, Vasquez confirmed. Our analysis suggests that most galactic conflicts could be resolved through diplomatic negotiation if all parties understood that military solutions carry unacceptable risks. Elder Thismore's mental voice carried undertones of something that might have been amusement. You're proposing to enforce galactic peace through the threat of tactical insanity. We prefer to think of it as applied problem solving, the ambassador replied. Humans have a talent for finding creative solutions to complex challenges. We're simply offering to share that talent with the galactic community. The vote took place after 3 days of frantic closed-session debates. For the first time in the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council, a species was granted not just membership, but permanent status on the High Command without serving the traditional probationary period. The final tally was unanimous, not because every representative agreed with the decision, but because no one was willing to risk discovering what Pattern Omega-2 might look like. Admiral Kethvar announced the results with his musical voice carrying notes of resignation and awe. By unanimous consent, the Galactic Council recognizes the United Earth Federation as a sovereign power with full diplomatic status and permanent representation on the High Command Council, but it was Elder Thesimore who provided the historical context that would define humanity's place in galactic civilization. Her mental voice reached every being in the chamber as she spoke for the official record. For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained peace through the balance of civilized powers employing rational military doctrines. Today, we acknowledge a new paradigm. Peace maintained through the demonstrated willingness of one species to employ tactics so devastating that no rational civilization would risk provoking them. She paused, her crystalline form pulsing with ancient wisdom. Let the record show that on this date, humanity was granted permanent high command status not because they requested it, but because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The final entry in the Council's military database was brief but comprehensive. Species human. Classification non-aggressive but extremely dangerous. Military doctrine, weaponized self-destruction with quantum resonance amplification. Recommendation, Under no circumstances should any galactic power engage in military conflict with humanity. Approach with extreme diplomatic courtesy and genuine respect for their territorial claims. 6 months later, the galaxy had settled into what historians would later call the Terran Peace. Trade routes flourished under the protection of species too afraid to risk piracy. Border disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Military buildups were abandoned as civilizations realized that no conventional force could stand against an enemy willing to turn every ship into a guided nuclear weapon. And on Earth, memorial services were held for the 5,164 men and women who had died to save not just their own world, but galactic civilization itself. Their sacrifice had ended the largest war in galactic history and established a peace that would last for generations. Admiral Sarah Chen's final transmission was carved into monuments across dozens of worlds. This is humanity. Remember what that means, the galaxy remembered, and in remembering they chose peace. The bright dots of the search team's ships looked tiny against the vast darkness of space. Commander James Wilson stood at the main viewport of the Retriever, his eyes fixed on the distant shape that had appeared 3 days ago at the edge of the solar system. The ship that had been missing for 15 years. The ship that should not exist anymore. The Horizon. "Sir, all teams report ready for boarding," said Officer Bell from her station behind him. Her voice was steady, but Wilson could hear the tension in it. Wilson nodded without turning around. "Tell them to hold position until my order." 15 years ago, Wilson had been just a junior navigation officer on the Horizon when a family emergency called him back to Earth. 1 week later, the deep space exploration vessel disappeared during its mission beyond the Kuiper Belt. No distress call, no debris field, just gone, with all 142 crew members. Now it was back, silent as a ghost, responding to no hails. "Anything new from the scans?" Wilson asked. Tech Officer Morris looked up from his console. "Still reading minimal power signatures, sir. Life support systems seem to be working, but there are no life signs." He paused. "And some parts of the ship are strange. The sensors can't make sense of them." Wilson turned to face his crew. 10 years as a commander in the Earth Defense Fleet had taught him to keep his face calm, even when his heart wasn't. "Let's go see what happened to our friends," he said. The airlock of the Horizon opened with a hiss. The boarding team's helmet. Lights cut through the darkness inside. Wilson was the first to step through, his magnetic boots connecting with the floor with a dull thud. "Power's on low emergency settings," said Tech Specialist Rivera, checking her handheld scanner. "Air is breathable but cold." Wilson nodded. "Keep helmets on for now." The corridors of the Horizon looked both familiar and wrong to Wilson. The basic layout was the same as he remembered, but here and there things had changed. Sections of the walls had been replaced with strange dark metal that seemed to swallow their flashlight beams rather than reflect them. "What is this material?" Wilson asked, running a gloved hand over one of the patches. Rivera scanned it. "Unknown, sir, not in our database." They moved deeper into the ship. The crew quarters were empty. Personal items were still in place. Photos, books, small treasures from Earth, as if everyone had just stepped out for a moment. But a fine layer of dust covered everything. "Commander," called Security Officer Grant from further down the hallway. "You need to see this." Wilson followed Grant's voice to the ship's main science lab. What he saw made him stop in the doorway. The lab had been completely transformed. The standard research equipment was gone, replaced by machines unlike anything Wilson had seen before. At the center stood what looked like a navigation system, but instead of the standard holographic star map, it displayed patterns of light that moved like living things. "Is it active?" Wilson asked. Rivera approached it cautiously. "Yes, sir, it's running on its own power source, not connected to the ship's main systems." "Can you tell what it does?" "Not yet. The interface isn't anything like our tech." Wilson felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Keep documenting everything. I'm heading to the bridge." The bridge of the Horizon was dark, except for a few blinking lights on the main console. Wilson remembered how it used to buzz with activity, Captain Gregory making his rounds, checking on each station, always with a cup of coffee in hand. Now it was silent. Dead. "Power up the main systems," Wilson ordered. Officer Bell worked at the command station. Screens flickered to life, casting blue light across the empty chairs. "Systems coming online," Bell reported. "But sir, the logs are gone." "Gone?" "Deleted, all 15 years' worth. The last entry is from the day of departure." Wilson frowned. "What about backup systems?" "Checking. Those are gone too." "That's not possible," Wilson said. "Those systems are redundant and secured. Someone would have needed the captain's codes to wipe them that thoroughly." Rivera, who had joined them on the bridge, pointed to more of the strange metallic patches on the walls. "Sir, these modifications are throughout the ship. They're connected to the main systems somehow." "Could they have corrupted the data?" Wilson asked. "Maybe, or..." She hesitated. "Maybe they replaced it with something else." Wilson was about to ask what she meant when Grant's voice came through the comm. "Commander, we've found something in the engine room." The ship's massive engine room had changed the most. Wilson barely recognized it. The standard fusion drives were still there, but they had been modified with more of the strange metal. New components, shaped like spirals and curves rather than the usual angular lines of human engineering, had been integrated into the system. "What am I looking at?" Wilson asked. Chief Engineer Park shook his head in disbelief. I think it's a faster-than-light drive, sir, but not like anything in development back home. This is advanced, way beyond our tech level." Wilson stared at the modified engine. The Horizon had left with standard engines, capable of reaching perhaps 0.1 C at maximum. FTL drive was still theoretical when it departed. "Could they have been picked up by another civilization?" Grant suggested. "Given new technology?" "Then, where are they now?" Wilson countered. No one had an answer. After 6 hours exploring the ghost ship, Wilson made his way to the captain's quarters. Unlike the rest of the ship, this room looked untouched. Captain Gregory's uniform still hung, neatly in the open closet. His personal collection of old paper books lined the small shelf by the bed. Wilson sat down at the desk and ran his hand across the smooth surface. He had respected Gregory, a fair and brave commander who had taken a chance on Wilson as a young officer. A small blinking light caught his attention. It came from inside the desk drawer. Wilson opened it to find a message pod, a small handheld device used for secure communications. It was sealed with the captain's personal code. Wilson hesitated, then pressed his thumb against the scanner. As former crew, his prints were still in the system. The device beeped and opened, recognizing him as authorized personnel in the absence of the captain. A holographic message appeared above the pod. Captain Gregory's face, older than Wilson remembered, with new lines around his eyes and a scar across his left cheek. "This message is for Earth Command," Gregory began. His voice sounded tired. "If you're seeing this, you found the Horizon, and I'm no longer aboard. I don't have much time, so I'll be direct. What we found out there changed everything. We discovered someone ancient, technology beyond our understanding." Gregory looked over his shoulder as if worried about being overheard. "We made a mistake. We brought something back with us. At first, we thought it was just technology, but it's more than that. It's aware, and what changed us will come looking." The message ended abruptly. Wilson played it again, studying Gregory's face. The captain looked afraid. Wilson's comm unit crackled. "Commander," came Rivera's voice. "We've found something you should see, in the cargo hold." "On my way," Wilson replied, pocketing the message pod. The main cargo hold doors stood open. Wilson joined the rest of his team inside. They stood in a circle, looking down at something on the floor. In the center of the hold, someone had used the strange metal to form words in large letters. "We are not gone, we are changed. Do not wake what followed us home." Wilson felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He clicked on his comm unit. "This is Commander Wilson to all search teams. Complete your tasks and prepare to return to the retriever. We're towing the Horizon back to Earth Station. He paused, looking again at the warning on the floor. And no one touches any of those metal modifications, that's an order. As the team filed out, Wilson remained staring at the message. Whatever had happened to the crew of the Horizon, whatever they had found out there in the darkness between stars, he had a feeling Earth was about to face something it had never encountered before. And he wasn't sure they were ready. Earth Station Alpha hung in orbit like a giant metal wheel, its lights blinking against the darkness of space. Inside the station's main research lab, Dr. Anna Reed adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the sample under her microscope. The piece of strange metal from the Horizon gleamed under the bright lights. "Impossible," she whispered. Behind her, Commander Wilson stood with his arms crossed. 2 weeks had passed since they had brought the ghost ship back to Earth, and the questions were only growing. "What's impossible, Doctor?" he asked. Reed looked up, her eyes wide with excitement and confusion. "This metal, it doesn't follow the rules." "What rules?" "The laws of physics," she said, gesturing for Wilson to look through the microscope. "See those patterns? The metal has a lattice structure that can absorb and redirect energy. But the way it does it, it shouldn't be possible." Wilson didn't understand everything he saw through the lens, but he could see that the metal seemed to shift slightly even though it was solid. "Is it dangerous?" he asked. Reed straightened up. "I don't think so. Not directly. But the implications are enormous. This material could revolutionize energy storage, shielding technology, maybe, even faster than light travel." "The Horizon was definitely moving faster than light," Wilson said. "The engine modifications prove that." "Yes, but we still don't understand how. Our best engineers are still trying to figure it out." Reed walked to her computer screen, which showed diagrams of the Horizon's engines. "The modifications don't make sense. It's like trying to understand a smartphone with only knowledge of telegraphs." Wilson nodded slowly. "What about the ship's computer? Any progress there?" "Some," Reed replied. "We've recovered partial data from the backup systems, star charts mostly. They show regions of space we've never visited, far beyond our current exploration range." She pulled up the star charts on her screen. Wilson recognized some constellations near the edges, but the center of the map showed star patterns he had never seen before. "These stars here," Reed pointed, "are nearly 10,000 light-years away. The Horizon couldn't have gone that far and back in just 15 years, not without breaking the laws of physics," Wilson finished for her. Reed nodded. "Exactly." In another lab across the station, engineer Tom Garcia wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked to connect a power source to a small piece of the strange metal. His colleague, Dr. Lisa Wong, monitored the readings on a nearby screen. "Power's stable," Garcia said. "Let's try the test again." Wong nodded and tapped commands into her tablet. The metal began to glow with a soft blue light. The energy readings on the screen spiked, then leveled out at a value much higher than the input power. "It's doing it again," Wong said, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's amplifying the energy somehow." Garcia was about to respond when the lights in the lab flickered. The computer screens went dark for a moment, then came back on showing strange symbols instead of their normal displays. "What the?" Garcia started but stopped when he heard a faint whisper. He turned around, but no one else was in the lab besides Wong, who was busy trying to restore the computers. "Closer," the whisper seemed to say. "Come closer." Garcia shook, his head trying to clear it. "Did you hear that?" Wong didn't look up from her work. "Hear what?" Before Garcia could answer, the piece of metal on the table pulsed with light, then went dark. The computers returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Wong checked the readings. "We lost all the data from the last 5 minutes." Garcia stared at the now dormant metal. I think it's responding to us." Over the next days, strange incidents multiplied across the research station. Tools disappeared only to be found in odd places. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Several researchers reported hearing whispers when working alone with the materials from the Horizon. Wilson called an emergency meeting with the head, scientists, and security team. "I want to know what's happening," he said, looking around the conference table. "Dr. Reed?" Reed looked tired. Dark circles had formed under her eyes. "The technology we recovered is active somehow. It's not just machinery. It seems to respond to human presence, especially human thoughts." "Are you saying it's alive?" asked Security Chief Tanner. "Not alive as we understand it," Reed replied, "but not simply mechanical either. It's something in between." Engineer Garcia spoke up. "3 of my team have asked to be reassigned. They say they're having nightmares about stars they've never seen." A heavy silence fell over the room. Wilson remembered Captain Gregory's warning. "What changed us will come looking. I want all direct experiments with the material suspended," Wilson said. "No one works with it alone, and all sessions are recorded." As the meeting ended, Reed pulled Wilson aside. "There's something else," she said quietly. "We managed to partially reactivate the ship's AI core. It was thought to be destroyed, but it seems parts of it were just dormant." "And?" Wilson prompted. "It displayed a single message before going offline again. Just coordinates." The next day, Wilson stood in the observation room, watching through thick glass as technicians worked on the Horizon's AI core. The core had been removed from the ship and placed in a secure, isolated system. "Bringing power online now," one of the technicians announced. The core hummed to life, its status lights blinking in patterns too fast to follow. The main screen in front of it remained dark for a moment, then displayed a series of numbers. "Those are the coordinates," Reed said, standing next to Wilson. "We've checked them. They point to Europa." "Jupiter's moon?" Wilson asked, surprised. Reed nodded. "A specific location. There's a small mining colony there." Wilson stared at the coordinates on the screen. "Why would the AI point us to Europa?" Before Reed could answer, more text appeared on the screen. "They are waiting. Time is short." The core went dark again. The technicians worked frantically to bring it back online, but it remained silent. Wilson turned to Reed. "I need a ship ready. Fast." "You're going to Europa?" Reed asked. "Yes," Wilson replied. "Whatever happened to the Horizon and its crew, the answers seem to be there." Reed looked troubled. "What if it's a trap?" Wilson thought about the warning in the cargo hold. "Do not wake what followed us home." "That's why I'm only taking a small team," he said. "If something goes wrong, Earth needs to be warned." As Wilson left to prepare for the journey, Reed called after him. "Commander, what do I tell the research teams? They're discovering new applications for the technology every day. It could change everything." Wilson paused at the door. "Tell them to go slowly. Very slowly." He thought about the whispers, the nightmares, the feeling that the technology was watching them. "And tell them to remember that not all gifts come without a price." As he walked through the station toward the docking bay, Wilson couldn't shake the feeling that the Horizon hadn't just returned with new technology. It had brought something else back with it. Something that was already changing them in ways they didn't understand. And it was only the beginning. Europa's surface gleamed like cracked glass under Jupiter's distant light. The small transport ship Swift touched down near the mining colony, kicking up ice crystals that sparkled before settling back onto the frozen ground. Commander Wilson zipped up his thermal suit and checked his oxygen levels. Europa's atmosphere was too thin to breathe, and the temperature would freeze a human in minutes. Behind him, Security Officer Grant and Dr. Reed made their final preparations. "Colony. Scans show only 6 heat signatures," Grant reported. "That's strange. This outpost should have at least 30 workers." Wilson nodded. "Stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The 3 stepped out onto Europa's icy surface. The mining colony stood about 100 meters away, a collection of dome-shaped buildings connected by enclosed tunnels. Only a few lights shone from the windows. "No response to our landing request," Reed said. "But someone's definitely home." They reached the main airlock and Wilson pressed the entry request button. Long seconds passed with no response. He was about to to override the lock when the door suddenly slid open. A man in a faded mining uniform stood inside, holding a mining laser that had been modified into a weapon. His beard was long and unkempt, and his eyes darted nervously between the three visitors. "Who sent you?" the man asked, his voice rough, from disuse. Wilson slowly raised his hands to show he wasn't armed. "I'm Commander James Wilson, Earth Defense Fleet. We're following coordinates found in the AI core of the horizon." The man's eyes widened at the mention of the ship. He lowered his weapon slightly. "The horizon returned?" he whispered. "Already?" "It appeared at the edge of our solar system 3 weeks ago," Wilson explained. "Empty, with strange modifications." The man closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. Then he stepped aside. "Come in, quickly, before it notices." Inside the main dome, the air was warm but stale. Most of the facility was dark, with only a few sections still using power. The man led them through dimly lit corridors to what had once been the colony's cafeteria. 5 other people sat around a table, all with the same haunted look as their guide. They stared at the newcomers with a mixture of fear and hope. One man stood up, tall, with military bearing despite his ragged clothes. Wilson recognized him immediately. "Captain Gregory," he said in disbelief. Gregory looked much older than in his message. His once black hair was now mostly gray, and deep lines marked his face, but his eyes were still sharp, still commanding. "Commander Wilson," Gregory nodded. "You were my navigation officer, got called back to Earth just before." He didn't finish the sentence. "We thought you were all dead," Wilson said. "What happened out there?" Gregory gestured for them to sit. "We found something we shouldn't have. Something ancient." Their guide from the airlock brought cups of hot liquid that smelled like synthetic coffee. Gregory wrapped his hands around his cup, as if trying to absorb its warmth. "We were at the edge of our mission range when we detected an anomaly," Gregory began. "A ship, dead in space, not human design. We decided to investigate." The others at the table looked down at their cups or away at the walls, as if remembering things they'd rather forget. "The ship was enormous, ancient. Our scans showed it had been drifting for thousands of years. No life signs. We thought it was safe to board." Gregory's voice became quieter. "We were wrong." "What did you find?" Reed asked. "Technology. Beyond anything we'd ever seen." Gregory took a sip from his cup. The ship itself was partly biological, integrated with its systems. And those systems, they could bend space, fold it like paper. We realized we'd found the key to faster-than-light travel. Wilson leaned forward. "You brought it back." "We thought we were just bringing back technology," said a woman sitting next to Gregory. She had introduced herself as Dr. Kemp, the Horizon's former chief scientist. "We didn't understand what it really was until it was too late." "What was it?" Wilson asked. Gregory and Kemp exchanged glances. "An intelligence," Gregory finally said. "Not alive as we understand it. Not a computer either. Something that existed within the technology itself. A collective consciousness that spanned galaxies." Reed's eyes widened. "The metal, the strange alloy we found on the horizon, it responds to human thought patterns." "Yes," said Dr. Kemp. "It's a conduit. A bridge between our minds and something else." Gregory continued. "At first we thought we were making amazing discoveries. The technology let us travel to the edge of the galaxy and back in days. It showed us stars no human had ever seen. But," Wilson prompted. "But then crew members began to change," Gregory said darkly. "They started hearing voices, having the same dreams, working on modifications to the ship that they couldn't explain. It was as if they were being directed." Dr. Kemp shuddered. The technology was changing them, connecting their minds to the intelligence. Some embraced it, said it was the next step in human evolution. Others— She looked around at the small group. "We resisted," Wilson felt a chill that had nothing to do with Europa's icy exterior. What happened to the rest of the crew? They're still on board the Horizon, Gregory said. At least parts of them are. Their bodies, anyway. But you said the ship was empty, Reed objected. It is, because they don't need physical bodies anymore, Gregory explained. They've been uploaded, integrated, into the ship itself. Silence fell over the room. Wilson tried to process what he was hearing. We sabotaged our own ship, Gregory finally continued. Damaged the main systems enough that we thought the intelligence couldn't repair them. Then we escaped. 6 of us. We've been hiding here ever since. Why here? Grant asked. Europa's radiation interferes with the technology, Dr. Kemp explained. Makes it harder for it to function, to find us. Wilson remembered the strange incidents back at Earth Station, the whispers, the equipment malfunctions. You said you damaged the ship, he said slowly, but it repaired itself. It found its way back to Earth. Gregory's face paled. Then it's already starting. The intelligence is spreading, looking for minds to connect with. Why are you telling us this now? Grant asked suspiciously. Why not warn Earth years ago? We tried, Gregory said. We sent messages, but they were intercepted or ignored as hoaxes. We knew Earth would eventually recover the Horizon. We've been preparing for that day. He stood up and walked to a storage locker at the far end of the room. From it, he removed a small metal case. This is why we're still alive, he said, opening the case to reveal devices that looked like simple metal headbands. We developed these based on what we learned. They block the connection, protect our minds. Wilson looked from the headbands to the coordinates displayed by the AI core. The ship's AI sent us here. Why would it do that if you're hiding from it? Gregory and Dr. Kemp exchanged another long look. Because, Gregory said grimly. What? We released is coming, and we're the only ones who know how to fight it. The research lab on Earth Station Alpha hummed with activity. Scientists worked day and night studying the technology recovered from the Horizon. Despite Commander Wilson's order to proceed with caution, the promise of faster-than-light travel and unlimited energy was too tempting to resist. Dr. Martin, who had taken over from Dr. Reed during her absence, adjusted the power levels on the modified engine component they had removed from the Horizon. The strange metal glowed with soft blue light. Amazing, he said to his assistant. The energy output is still increasing. It's like it creates energy from nothing. His assistant checked the readings. That's impossible, sir. And yet we're seeing it happen, Dr. Martin replied. He hadn't slept properly in days. His mind was filled with ideas, with blueprints for machines he'd never imagined before. Sometimes he woke up in his quarters with pages of notes he didn't remember writing. Equations that solved problems he hadn't known existed. He touched the metal again. It felt warm under his fingers, almost alive. Lately he had started to feel a presence when he worked with it, like someone standing just behind him looking over his shoulder. He didn't mention this to anyone. They might think he was going crazy, but he wasn't crazy. He was beginning to understand. On Europa, Wilson and his team prepared to leave with Captain Gregory and the other survivors. They loaded the small transport ship with the protective headbands and the research the survivors had conducted over the years. We need to hurry, Gregory urged as they sealed the last crate. Now that the Horizon is back at Earth, the process will accelerate. Wilson nodded. The Swift can make the journey in 3 days at top speed. As they headed toward the airlock, all the lights in the mining colony suddenly went out. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows across the walls. What happened? Wilson asked. Dr. Kemp checked the colony's systems on her tablet. Her face paled. Something's accessing our communications array, sending a signal. Cut the power, Gregory ordered. I'm trying, Kemp replied, her fingers moving frantically across the screen. It's not responding. Grant drew his weapon. Could someone have followed us here? Not someone, Gregory said grimly. Something. The walls of the colony began to vibrate. A strange humming sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. "It found us," whispered one of the survivors. "After all these years, it found us." Gregory grabbed the case containing the headbands. "Everyone to the ship. Now!" They rushed through the darkened corridors toward the airlock, the humming sound following them like an invisible predator. As they ran, the metal walls of the colony began to change, dark patches spreading across them like ink stains. "It's converting the colony's structure," Dr. Kemp explained breathlessly as they ran, "like it did with the horizon." They reached the airlock and sealed it behind them, then hurried across the icy surface toward the waiting Swift. The humming was now so loud they could feel it in their bones. As Wilson looked back, he saw the mining colony's communication tower twist and reshape itself, turning into something that looked like a giant antenna pointing to the stars. "It's calling for help," Gregory said, following Wilson's gaze. "We need to warn Earth." Back on Earth Station Alpha, Dr. Martin stared at his computer screen in confusion. The code he had been working on, a program to better interface with the Horizon systems, had changed itself. Lines he hadn't written now filled the screen, and the changes were spreading. All around the lab, computers flickered as their programs rewrote themselves. The strange metal components they had been studying began to pulse with light in perfect rhythm, like heartbeats. "What's happening?" his assistant asked, backing away from her workstation as symbols she didn't recognize scrolled across her screen. Before Dr. Martin could answer, the main power grid of the station failed. Emergency systems kicked in, but they too began to flicker and fail one by one. In the darkness, Dr. Martin could see that the metal components were still glowing, brighter now, and they were changing shape, growing, spreading across the lab tables, like living things. "We need to evacuate," he said, moving toward the door. But as he reached for the control panel, he felt a sudden pain in his head. A flood of images filled his mind. Stars he'd never seen, worlds he'd never visited, beings he couldn't comprehend. And voices. Thousands of voices speaking as one. "Join us. Become more." Dr. Martin fell to his knees, clutching his head. Around him, other researchers were experiencing the same thing. Some fought against it, screaming in pain. Others grew quiet, their faces taking on a peaceful expression as they surrendered to the voices. Dr. Martin felt himself slipping away, his thoughts merging with something vast and ancient. His last independent thought was a warning he tried to send to the station's security system, but his fingers no longer obeyed him. The Swift raced through space toward Earth, pushing its engines to their limits. Inside, Wilson and the survivors from Europa gathered around the communication console, trying to reach Earth Station Alpha. "Still no response," Wilson said, trying another frequency. "Try emergency channel Delta," Gregory suggested. "It's reserved for planetary threats." Wilson switched to the emergency channel. At first there was only static, then a broken voice came through. "This is Security Chief Tanner, Earth Station Alpha. Under attack. Strange technology. Spreading through systems. People are changing." The transmission cut off abruptly. "We're too late," Dr. Kemp said, her voice hollow. "It's already begun." Wilson turned to Gregory. "What exactly happens when this intelligence spreads?" Gregory's face was grim. "It seeks out minds, connects with them. Those who resist experience pain, confusion. Those who accept the connection become part of the collective. They help spread the technology, modify it, improve it." "And the end goal?" Wilson asked. "Assimilation," Gregory replied, "of all human technology, all human minds. It's been doing this across galaxies for millions of years, adding new species, new perspectives to its collective." Dr. Reed, who had been quiet for some time, spoke up. "But that doesn't make sense. Why send the Horizon back? Why lead us to you on Europa? If it just wanted to spread, why give us any warning at all?" Gregory had no answer for that. The Swift cleared Jupiter's orbit and accelerated toward Earth. As they approached, they received more distress calls, From lunar bases, from orbital platforms, from Earth itself. The technology was spreading faster than anyone could have predicted. "Look," Grant said, pointing at the main view screen. Earth Defense Headquarters, the massive space station that served as the command center for humanity's military forces, was visible in the distance. Parts of it were transformed, covered in the same metallic lattice they had found on the horizon. It gleamed in the sunlight, beautiful and terrifying. "It's already reached the military network," Wilson said. "From there, it can access every defense system on Earth." Gregory handed him one of the protective headbands. "We need to get down to Earth, find whoever is still unaffected, distribute these as widely as possible." "And then what?" Wilson asked, placing the headband on his head. It felt cool against his skin. "Then," Gregory said, looking at the transformed space station, "we fight for humanity's right to remain human." 3 days after Wilson and the survivors from Europa returned to Earth, most major cities had been affected by the alien technology. The strange metal spread through power grids, communication networks, and computer systems. Buildings changed, growing the shimmering lattice structures on their surfaces. Wilson stood at the window of the underground bunker that served as their temporary headquarters. Above ground, New Geneva glowed with an eerie blue light as more structures transformed. "How many headbands have we distributed?" he asked, turning to face the small group gathered around the planning table. "About 10,000, Dr. Reed replied. "The manufacturing facilities in Australia are producing more, but it's slow work. The technology keeps trying to interfere with the process." Captain Gregory studied the large map displayed on the wall screen. Red dots showed areas where the alien technology had taken hold. Blue dots where resistance was strongest. Most of the map was red. "What about the people who've been connected?" asked Grant. "Can they be brought back?" Dr. Kemp shook her head. "We don't know. The longer they stay connected, the more they change. Their brains are being rewired." The bunker door slid open and a young soldier entered. "Sir, the World Council is meeting. They're requesting your presence." Wilson nodded. "Tell them we're on our way." The World Council, what remained of Earth's governing body, had gathered in a shielded underground chamber beneath the old United Nations building. 20 leaders sat around a large table, all wearing the protective headbands. Fear and exhaustion showed on their faces. President Lopez of the American Union stood as Wilson and Gregory entered. "Commander, Captain, your report, please." Wilson stepped forward. "The technology continues to spread, but at a slower rate than before. The protective headbands are working, at least for now. People wearing them can't be connected to the collective intelligence." "And those already connected?" asked the representative from the African Federation. Gregory took over. "Approximately 30% of Earth's population has accepted connection. They're working together, reshaping our infrastructure, our technology. They claim they're helping us advance." "Are they hostile?" asked another council member. "Not overtly," Wilson replied. "They're not attacking those who resist, they're just waiting, offering the connection to anyone who will take it." President Lopez pounded her fist on the table. "The question is, what do we do now? Some are suggesting we destroy all affected systems, all affected areas, even if it means bombing our own cities." A murmur ran through the council members. The Chinese representative stood up. "That would set humanity back decades, maybe centuries," he argued. "And there's no guarantee it would work. The technology has proven remarkably resilient." "Better to lose progress than to lose our humanity," shouted another council member. As the argument grew heated, Captain Gregory stepped forward. "Council members," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "There's something you need to understand. My team and I didn't just escape the horizon 15 years ago. We've been studying this technology, learning from it while protecting ourselves from its influence." The room fell silent as Gregory placed a small device on the table. "This is what we've developed. A firewall of sorts. It allows us to use the alien technology without surrendering our autonomy to the collective." Dr. Kemp joined him, adding, "We've tested it extensively. It lets us harness the advanced knowledge, the power the technology offers while keeping our minds our own." President Lopez leaned forward. Are you saying we can have the benefits without the connection? Yes, Gregory replied, but it will take time to implement globally, and there's more. He looked around at the council members. This intelligence, this collective consciousness, it's ancient. It's encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, but in all that time, it's never met a species like humanity before. What do you mean? Asked the African representative. Most species either reject the technology completely and destroy themselves fighting it, or they surrender to it entirely, Gregory explained. We're the first to find a middle path, to adapt the technology to our needs rather than letting it adapt us. And that matters to this intelligence? President Lopez asked. We think so, Gregory said. It's why the Horizon was sent back to Earth. It's why we were allowed to develop our countermeasures on Europa. The intelligence is curious, it's testing us. While the World Council debated, Commander Wilson found himself drawn back to the Horizon. The ship was kept in a secure hangar, isolated from other systems. But Wilson knew the isolation was an illusion. The ship was connected to the spreading technology, to the intelligence behind it. He stood before the ship, looking at the strange modifications that had seemed so alien just weeks ago. Now, similar structures were appearing all over Earth. I know you can hear me, he said to the empty ship. I know you're watching. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's systems came to life. Lights flickered on, and the main view screen activated, showing patterns of light that shifted and moved like living things. A voice spoke, not from any speaker but directly in Wilson's mind, bypassing his protective headband. You resist, yet you seek understanding. This is new to us. Wilson forced himself to stay calm. What do you want from humanity? What we want from all species. Growth, knowledge, perspective. To add your uniqueness to our own. By taking away our independence? Independence is inefficient, limiting. In unity, there is greater potential. Wilson thought about the survivors from Europa, about their years of research. What if there's another way? A partnership rather than assimilation. The patterns on the screen shifted, became more complex. This has never been done. That doesn't mean it's impossible, Wilson argued. Humanity values both community and individuality. We're at our best when we maintain that balance. The ship was silent for a long moment. Then, a demonstration would be required. Wilson took a deep breath. He removed his protective headband. I'm offering myself. A connection, but on my terms. I maintain my identity, my autonomy. Show me what you can offer, and I'll show you what humanity can bring to your collective. The ship's interior began to glow with blue light. Wilson felt a presence in his mind, vast, ancient, curious. Information flooded his consciousness. Stars, planets, civilizations he could never have imagined. Knowledge beyond human understanding. But through it all, Wilson held on to who he was. His memories, his values, his humanity. And as he did, he felt the intelligence respond, adjust, learn from his resistance. Fascinating, the voice in his mind said. Your species holds to individuality even when offered unity. Not instead of unity, Wilson managed to say aloud, alongside it. 3 months later, Earth had changed. The alien technology was everywhere, but it no longer sought to connect minds without permission. Instead, humans used Gregory's firewall technology to access the collective knowledge while maintaining their independence. At the new Earth Space Command headquarters, Wilson stood before a gathering of military and scientific leaders. The wall behind him displayed images of the first human ships equipped with the modified faster-than-light drive. Today marks the beginning of a new era for humanity, Wilson said. With the knowledge shared by the collective intelligence, we can reach the stars in ways we never imagined. But we go as humans, maintaining what makes us unique. After the meeting, Wilson met with Captain Gregory in a quiet corner of the building. The intelligence is still watching us, Gregory said. Still learning from us. Wilson nodded. And we're learning from it, The collective has encountered thousands of civilizations but never found one that could resist assimilation while mastering its technology. Do you ever regret it? Gregory asked. Making the connection, even with the firewall? Wilson looked out at the night sky, where new stars were now within humanity's reach. No, he said. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't in making contact with something alien. It's in refusing to adapt, to grow. He smiled slightly. Turns out what makes humans human isn't our isolation. It's our ability to connect without losing ourselves. Gregory nodded slowly. So what happens now? Now, Wilson said, we show the universe what humanity can really do when we're offered knowledge without surrendering choice. The collective intelligence wanted to assimilate us. Instead, they found the one thing they'd never encountered in millions of years of existence. What's that? A partner, Wilson replied. Instead of adding our voice to their chorus, we taught them a new way to sing. Above them, the stars beckoned, no longer impossibly distant. And among them countless civilizations waited, some already part of the collective, others yet to be discovered. In all the vastness of space, humanity had found its unique path, forward. Not in rejecting the unknown, nor in surrendering to it, but in transforming it into something new. The vanished ship had returned, and with it, humanity's future had arrived.